A couple of days ago, I posted a video that was titled, "You Can't Judge a Phone by Its Specs Alone." And even though some of you thought that video was specifically about the Pixel 10, even though I don't think I mentioned the Pixel 10 at any point in the video, I did talk about Pixels a decent amount, so I guess fair enough. I do think that video was pretty well received. And one of the topics within that video was smartphone photography and the fact that you can't simply look at the sensor size, the resolution, and determine what camera is going to take the photos that you prefer. In this video, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that. I posted an article over on shanecraig.tech. Camera processing comparison, Z Fold 7, Find N5, Magic V5. These are three phones I get comments about all the time. Shane, can you compare these? And realistically, all three of these phones take very, very good images. They're all very, very detailed because they're all modern smartphones, and every smartphone that's like not a total piece of garbage takes pretty good photos. But where they differ is with their processing, the way that they handle color and lighting and things like that. So that is what we're going to focus on in this video. And there's a theme, there's a through line for this that you can kind of look at and understand, hey, this is what Z Fold 7 pictures are going to look like. This is what Find N5 pictures are going to look at. And this is what Magic V5 images are going to look like. And I think that that's going to be useful for those of you trying to decide between these phones. So that I can zoom in and kind of be a bit more detailed with this, we're going to be looking at these photos as they appear in a Google Photos album. But if you want to see these photos for yourself, there is an article on, like I said, shanecraig.tech, where you can see each and every one of these images yourself, as well as a quick write-up about what I think if you want that written version instead. But that being said, let's jump over to this album. Let's go full screen, and let's start diving into these images. So as we go through these, you will be able to see the phone that we are talking about right here on the right-hand side. This is the Galaxy Z Fold 7. Now, I said I'm not going to go too deep into detail, but we will zoom in just a little bit so you can get kind of a general idea of what we're dealing with here with the Fold 7. And to my eye, given that this plant is sitting right outside the window of my studio, I do think that this looks very detailed and very color accurate. Next up is going to be the Honor Magic V5, and when I took these photos, we had some visitors on the plant, and I think that the biggest thing you can notice from one to the other is the Honor Magic V5 is just brighter. If you do punch in on the details in the same way, you can see that it also does look very, very detailed, but we are beginning to, I think, lose a little bit of detail just by how much this has been brightened up. And lastly, looking at the Oppo Find N5, what you'll see here is, again, a very detailed image, but it is darker than the V5, and it does seem to have a bit more of a moody, highly contrasted look versus the Fold 7. So again, just to kind of go through these, Find N5, Magic V5, Galaxy Z Fold 7. One thing that I do notice is that the Z Fold 7 does have a more natural shallow depth of field. Look at the bokeh down here on the plant versus on the other phones. It does look to me like that's a little bit stronger of a bokeh. Moving on, the next shot is a 3x zoom shot from the Galaxy Z Fold 7. I do believe that this actually did use the primary sensor. Occasionally, the Z Fold 7 will do that. If it thinks that the primary sensor is going to give you a better image, it will just use that instead. Colors remain very consistent because it probably is the same sensor, and I think that the details look pretty solid as well. Zooming in so that you can see that if we go to the Honor Magic V5, it is very light and very bright. Things have shifted almost to a whiter color in this image, which is a little bit strange to me. If we do zoom in, though, I do think that maybe this is retaining a bit better detail than the Z Fold 7, which is interesting. And in the Oppo Find N5, details are also looking quite good. But you can see how big of a difference there is between, the Find N5 and the Magic V5. These are so different. The V5 is such a light image, whereas Oppo is delivering a much darker, more highly contrasted image. Just going between these three, the fact that this is the same plant is almost strange because they look so different. Especially the V5 is really out of left field for me. This shot was taken in, I would say, subpar lighting, and this is a 10x zoom, so we are seeing the zoom sensor from all three. And I just kind of want to show you the level of detail that the Z Fold 7 is able to get from its 3x sensor that I think everybody just thinks is terrible. And you can see here, yeah, it's not amazing. You can't really make out much of this. You can tell that these are National Geographic books for sure, but the detail is not amazing. On the Magic V5, this is definitely a step up. This is much more legible, even though it is once again quite a bit lighter than the other images. And then the Oppo Find N5 actually, to me, looks closer to the Z Fold 7 than it does to the Find N5 V5 in terms of detail, but it is definitely much, much darker. So I would once again kind of submit to you that if you think that the zoom lens on the Z Fold 7 is absolutely trash and unusable, get a good look at this level of detail here. Will you say the same thing is true for the Oppo Find N5? Because when you actually take these images, yes, it's darker, and yes, there's more contrast, but is there more detail? Here's another one that's in just sort of a difficult lighting scenario with these blue LED lights. Look at the Pixel 9 there, and that color, that pink color on the Z Fold 7 versus Honor, which is definitely a bit pinker than it is in reality. And then the Oppo Find N5 kind of loses the plot a little bit. That's not really the right color. That's more of like a peach color than a pink color. I think Z Fold is probably the closest to reality. Looking at this rose outside, these plants tend to kind of give most smartphones trouble. The color tends to look like this like fluorescent nuclear pink, and I think we're getting a little bit of that here. The Magic V5 is once again just a lot brighter. And the Oppo Find N5, I think, has done a pretty good job here, but this is a lot warmer, once again, than I think it was in reality. The colors are probably closer to accurate on the Z Fold 7. We can't leave out the ultra-wide, so here is a shot with the Z Fold 7's ultra-wide. I think things look fairly balanced and neutral. The Honor Magic V5 looks very, very similar. In fact, there's not really a ton to point out in terms of differences between these two. And then the Oppo Find N5 is just got a bad ultra-wide sensor, and there's just not much they can do, right? You can't always point to specs, but when you're talking about a very small 8-megapixel sensor, you are going to be constrained by that. Once you hit a certain threshold of sensor quality, I think things do even out. But if you're starting really, really low on the sensor quality, yeah, that is definitely going to be a factor, and it's definitely a factor here. And then looking at low light, another one in some interesting lighting conditions. Once again, the Z Fold 7 and the Honor Magic V5 are very difficult to distinguish. These two shots look almost identical. And then the Oppo Find N5, the colors do get pumped up. We get more of that sort of nuclear red, cherry red coming out of this Pokeball. Again, not a bad image, but it's just a little bit more exaggerated than maybe what you got on the V5 or on the Z Fold 7. So as we go through these, again, like I stated earlier, you do have sort of a through line. You can begin to predict what these images might look like. Samsung's shots, I think, are very natural. The lighting is natural. The colors are natural. The Honor Magic V5, using the natural preset, the colors do look pretty standard, pretty normal, maybe a little bit more saturated than Samsung, but they are brighter. And the Oppo Find N5 is sort of doing its own thing. It's more contrasted. It is a bit warmer. Again, these aren't bad images. They're just different, and all three of them are different. And it's up to you to determine which one you like the best. Like I said in that prior video, you can't judge a smartphone by its specs. And camera sensors, that hardware, I think that is a fantastic example of exactly what I'm talking about. You just can't look at a sensor and know what they're going to do with color and shadow and all of these sorts of things. And now I think for those three phones, you have a pretty good idea of what we're looking at. And I think that broadly speaking, this illustrates my point. So guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.